You are 700 miles from the nearest coast, and still you know the sound. Rain on a rooftop, relentless, drumming through the night. Water that fell from a cloud, that once rose from a sea you have never seen, that will drain through gutters and rivers and return to it by morning. Every drop in your gutter is on its way home. It has always been on its way home. It has never once, in the entire history of this planet, forgotten how to leave or failed to come back. Now take away the return trip. When most people try to picture a world claimed by the ocean, they imagine the edges of maps slowly fraying away. They see coastal towers in Manhattan or Tokyo submerged in quiet blue water, glass skyscrapers transformed into artificial reefs while humanity flees inland, retreating to higher ground, to mountain chains, to elevated plateaus. But that comforting visual relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of planetary scale. The true horror of an ocean-covered Earth is not that the coastlines drown. It is that the concept of an inland ceases to exist. If the oceans expand enough to cover every continent, Mount Everest does not survive as an isolated island peak. At nearly 30,000 feet above current sea level, even its jagged summit lies buried beneath an unbroken, boundless sea. The immediate human impulse is to grieve the lost cities, but the far more terrifying catastrophe is mechanical and atmospheric. Land is not merely soil to build upon. It is the planet's primary thermal sink and chemical filter. Rock weathered by falling rain scrubs carbon from the atmosphere, while high mountain ranges break up global wind currents into predictable, manageable weather systems. Without continents, the global climate engine loses its brakes. The ocean becomes a uniform, hyperheated surface, generating atmospheric megastorms that circle the globe indefinitely without ever hitting a shoreline to weaken them. Surface water is whipped into perpetual violent swells, while the abyssal depths starve of dissolved oxygen. The ultimate disaster is not simply that we lose the land beneath our feet. It is that without the land, the sky forgets how to regulate itself. To understand how human life persists when the terrestrial foundations of civilizational memory are erased, we must examine 4 distinct frontiers of endurance scattered across an endless, featureless global sea. The sharp, ozone smell of endless salt spray fills the air where thin, freezing mountain oxygen used to burn the lungs. An elder monk stands on the steel grating of a modular pontoon deck, gazing down into black water where the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas once scraped the heavens. Here, prayer flags are tied to structural radio masts, snapping violently in winds that travel 4,000 miles without striking a single tree or rock. Their ancient traditions were built around stone, soil, and mountain passes, subbles of eternal permanence. Now, every chanted prayer vibrates through a hollow metallic hull that rolls continuously with the swell, adrift in a world without cardinal directions or sacred ground. Survival here is a profound spiritual dislocation. When the physical anchor of a culture vanishes, faith must learn to float. In his palm, the monk turns a heavy iron key, forged 3 centuries ago for a monastery door that now rests 6 miles beneath his feet. The blinding, knife-like glare of sunlight reflects off a flat ocean surface, unbroken by even the faint silhouette of a distant shore. A former agricultural scientist adjusts translucent plastic tarps stretched over shallow black trays across the container ship's scorched upper deck. Freshwater is more precious than gold. Every drinking drop must be slowly distilled from seawater using crude black tarp solar stills, then collected in rusted oil drums. Food has been reduced to dense halophytic algae and salt-tolerant duckweed that tastes like copper and wet straw. The human body alters under this endless siege of salt and radiation. Skin thickens into dark, leathery calluses. Eyes remain permanently inflamed from the glare, and the total lack of dietary calcium softens bones over years at sea. He scrapes a crust of coarse white salt from his solar condenser tray, carefully tapping it into a wooden bowl. It is the 5th time today his knuckles have cracked open and bled onto the deck. If you are feeling the quiet weight of this transformation, the total erasure of everything familiar beneath an endless blue horizon, you are not alone. These scenarios push our understanding of human adaptability to its absolute limit. If this deep dive into hypothetical planetary shifts resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving your thoughts below. It helps us continue building these detailed investigative explorations. Now, let us move to our third profile. The deafening, rhythmic thrum of deep-sea hydraulic pumps echoes through the hollow steel legs of a modified offshore platform. A specialized technician clad in a thick synthetic dive suit monitors the tension gauges on miles-long carbon fiber tethers anchored to underwater volcanic vents. Denied access to terrestrial mining and smelting, this floating industrial outpost survives through marine mineral harvesting. They pass high-voltage electric currents through seawater, inducing electrode position to grow thick calcium carbonate coatings around steel frames, literally growing self-healing floating concrete docks out of seawater minerals. Power is generated continuously through ocean thermal energy conversion, exploiting the massive temperature differential between warm surface waters and icy abyssal currents. She tightens a high-pressure valve on a desalination manifold, watching the needle settle into the green zone as 40,000 tons of buoyant steel groan softly against the ocean's heavy pull. The quiet, suffocating humidity of an equatorial night settles over a mirror-smooth sea reflecting millions of sharp, motionless stars. A young mother sits in the cockpit of a wooden sailboat, gently rocking her child as 30 craft sway in unison around them. In this floating village, human society has fractured into tightly bound maritime clans, governed by strict communal resource laws. Language itself has begun to mutate. Words like road, forest, and soil have become abstract concepts to a generation of children who have never touched a piece of land. Personal property is stripped to total utility. A roll of marine-grade sealant is far more valuable than any amount of gold or paper currency. Intimacy is compressed into cramped, humid cabins, where privacy is an obsolete memory. She watches her daughter carefully spoon a precise ration of collected rainwater into a tin cup, ensuring not a single drop spills over the rim. To endure indefinitely on an ocean planet requires engineering systems that replicate nature's most sophisticated closed-loop mechanics. Modern offshore oil platforms already employ dynamic positioning systems and tension-leg tethers that allow structures weighing hundreds of thousands of tons to withstand extreme open ocean conditions. On a world covered in water, human survival depends on scaling these concepts alongside advanced biological recycling. Consider how artificial atmospheric closed-loop systems operate on these floating havens. In nature, the global hydrologic cycle evaporates water from the sea, purifies it in the upper atmosphere, and drops it back down onto the land to nourish ecosystems before returning home. Floating human habitats must build miniature, localized versions of this exact process. Large-scale solar condensation domes use trapped thermal heat to boil seawater, driving pure water vapor into cooling pipes where it condenses into drinkable water before feeding soilless hydroponic crop farms. The system mirrors the planet's atmospheric engine, condensing the wide ocean into a controlled, artificial mist. But while the Earth's natural water cycle can lose billions of gallons to deep aquifers or distant clouds without collapsing, an artificial system has no room for error. A loss of even 2% in evaporative efficiency does not simply cause a drought. It triggers a rapid, irreversible extinction cascade for everyone aboard the vessel. When we remove the continents in an exercise like this, we are forced to confront a fundamental illusion about our place on Earth. We view dry land as the default state of human existence, treating the ocean as merely the blank blue space between destinations. But in the long geological memory of the planet, continental landmasses are fragile, temporary anomalies, pushed up by tectonic forces that are themselves fleeting on cosmic timescales. An ocean-covered world is not an alien environment. It is simply the ultimate expression of the Earth's true identity. More than 70% of our planet's surface is already submerged beneath water, containing over 90% of its habitable volume. Human history, with all its empires, borders, and monumental architecture, has occurred entirely on a thin, dry crust clinging to the edges of a water world. By taking away the ground beneath our feet, The scenario reveals that our survival was never secured by the solidity of stone, but by a delicate thermal balance that keeps the global ocean in check. We are not land creatures who occasionally venture out to sea. We are fragile passengers living on temporary rafts of granite, living at the mercy of an all-encompassing global tide. Listen again to the rain drumming on your roof tonight. Every drop hitting the glass is still on its long, miraculous journey back to the sea, bound by a cycle that holds our entire world together. But in a world drowned beneath a single horizon, that sound loses its promise. Because when the entire planet becomes the ocean, water no longer has anywhere to return.